We'll come back to the deep dive. So if you are currently working, whether that's in an office, a factory, or, even a virtual meeting, you are part of this massive demographic shift.
You really are. I mean, the
Yeah.
reality is that for the first time, really in history, organizations are routinely managing up to 6 distinct generational cohorts,
Mhm.
all at the same time.
And that creates just this unprecedented level of organizational complexity.
It does. You've got the wisdom of traditionalists, maybe still in advisory roles, all the way down to Gen Alpha, who are just now starting their very first internships.
Wow.
And the stakes are huge because this diversity, it creates these amazing strategic opportunities for innovation. But, and this is a big but, only if leaders can navigate the pretty significant operational friction that comes with it.
And that friction is real. We've got the data. Our sources pointed to this situation at a huge Fortune 500 manufacturing firm. Their collaboration scores they plummeted whenever a team spanned more than 3 generations.
Plummeted. And there's a human cost, a big one.
A huge one. I mean, 35% of departing Gen Z employees said generational misalignment was a core reason for leaving. A third of them.
And on the other side.
On the other side, nearly 30% of baby boomer managers reported just this intense frustration with what they called unrealistic expectations from their younger colleagues. That's not a soft problem. That is quantifiable, expensive tension.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to move past all the tired, frankly, lazy stereotypes. We're not here to talk about avocado toast or, old school hierarchies.
Right.
We really need to synthesize actionable, research-informed practices to distill a clear leadership framework. The goal here is to help you turn this generational complexity into a real, durable competitive advantage.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have 6 cohorts, so who are they? And I guess, what are the forces that put them all in the same room right now?
Okay, so we can define the 6 active cohorts pretty quickly. It's really based on their formative experiences, the economic shifts, the technology, the things that shape their values.
And we should probably start with the 2 groups on the edges, right? We still have some traditionalists born before 1945. They often value loyalty, hierarchy, and you see them in senior advisor roles.
Exactly. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have Generation Alpha just starting to trickle in with internships. And they're expected to have, even deeper technological integration than anyone before them.
Okay, so who's in the middle? In the trenches?
That's where you have the 4 dominant groups. First, the baby boomers, 46 to 64, still holding a lot of executive and senior technical roles. They're known for that work-centric identity, that competitive drive.
Then you get to the crucial middle layer,
Yeah.
Generation X. That's 1965 to 1980. They make up so much of middle management.
The pragmatists.
The pragmatists, yeah. Shaped by economic uncertainty, very self-reliant, with a huge emphasis on work-life balance, often skeptical of institutions.
And then the biggest group in the workforce right now, millennials, or Gen Y, born 81 to 96. They make up, about 35% of the U.S. workforce?
And they are collaborative, purpose-driven, digitally fluent.
Right. And hot on their heels, the fastest growing group, Generation Z, that's 1997 to 2012, already almost 18% of the workforce.
These are the true digital natives. They're pragmatic about their careers, which, sometimes clashes with that purpose-driven vibe of the millennials.
It does. And that is just a phenomenal spectrum of life experience. But here's the critical caveat. The thing every leader has to internalize.
Okay.
We can talk about these tendencies, but the research is so clear on this. Within-generation variance often exceeds between-generation variance.
So wait, what you're saying is the difference between 2 people born in, say, 1985 might actually be bigger than the difference between someone from 85 and someone from 1965.
Exactly. Your individual context, your career stage, your specific life circumstances, they frequently matter more than just your birth year. So patterns are useful for strategy, but you manage individuals, not stereotypes.
That is such a key point.
So why is this happening now? Why are all 6 generations active at once? It's really 2 powerful demographic forces that have collided.
Which are?
First is extended participation. People are working longer, thanks to longevity, better health, changes in retirement. Labor force participation for workers over 65 just jumped. It went from under 13% in 2000 to nearly 19% by 2020.
So you have incredibly capable people in their late 60s, early 70s who are still contributing at a high level.
Right. And colliding with that is the second force, delayed entry. More people are getting degrees. Bachelor's degree completion shot up between 1995 and 2021, and that means younger folks are starting their full-time careers later.
So the age gap between the oldest and youngest employee is just wider than it's ever been.
Precisely. And that's your sixth-generation challenge. And the cost of failing to manage it is immense. We know turnover can cost anywhere from 50 to 200% of an annual salary. You just can't afford that kind of friction.
Which brings us to the other side of the coin. If friction is costing us this much, what are we leaving on the table if we actually get this right?
That's the perfect way to frame it. We have to shift from thinking about cost and friction to seeing this as a strategic asset.
Okay, and here is where it gets really interesting, because when this is managed well, generational diversity isn't a problem, it's an innovation engine.
It really is. The research shows that age-diverse teams generate more innovative solutions to complex problems, period.
And there's a number on that,
A
right?
big one. Firms that intentionally set up intergenerational collaboration practices showed 23% higher innovation metrics. That is a measurable, sustained competitive edge.
What's the mechanism there? Why does that happen?
It's this fascinating cognitive friction. You're blending established mental models, the wisdom, the organizational history, with the novel approaches and new techniques from younger staff. It forces a team to challenge all these untested assumptions.
And that intellectual friction, if you facilitate it properly, leads to better outcomes.
Directly to better outcomes. And this leads to maybe the most critical strategic asset right now.
Knowledge transfer.
Absolutely key, especially with this huge wave of boomers who are at or nearing retirement. The risk is profound. You could lose decades of institutional knowledge, technical expertise, crucial networks. For some companies, it's a slow-motion catastrophe.
So how do you stop that from happening? How do you mitigate the loss?
Structured intergenerational mentoring. The data shows that organizations with formal reverse mentoring programs.
Where the junior employees mentor the senior leaders.
Exactly. Those programs saw a 31% faster adoption of new digital tools among those senior leaders. It's a powerful mutual solution for retention and capability building for everyone.
And I think we have to talk about the emotional cost, too. When people experience age discrimination, whether it's you're too young to lead or you're too old to change, the impact is huge.
It is. They report 34% lower psychological safety scores and a 41% drop in their commitment to the organization. Stereotyping actively drains commitment.
That's a staggering data point, and it really raises the big question for any leader listening. How do we build systems that protect against these biases and actually turn diversity into real inclusion?
Well, the sources detail 5 proven, evidence-based interventions. This is the leadership toolkit you need.
Okay, first up, structured intergenerational mentoring. You said it before. If knowledge loss is the problem, reciprocity is the key.
Right. We have to move beyond that traditional one-way street where knowledge only flows down from the senior person. The model that works is reciprocal mentoring, mutual learning.
And the GE example is a classic, right? Back in the late 90s.
It's the classic. They were pioneers. They required hundreds of their most senior execs to find younger mentors to teach them about the internet. But they weren't just learning tech, they were learning new ways of communicating. Participants in those programs reported a 28% improvement in cross-generational understanding.
That's impressive. But I have to ask, doesn't that just put the burden of training senior executives on your youngest, lowest paid employees? How do you make that equitable?
That is a fantastic question. And the key is formality. It requires a clear matching process, a structured meeting framework, say biweekly, and crucially, training for both parties on communication and shared goals. It's recognized as a professional development opportunity for both sides. It formalizes the contribution.
Okay, that makes sense. So the second intervention tackles what seems to be the biggest day-to-day friction point, adaptive communication infrastructure.
The communication breakdown is brutal. I mean, we've all seen it. The senior leader who wants to print out an email chain to read it, sitting next to the intern who just tried to explain something with a quick video clip. How do you bridge that?
And the answer isn't to pick a winner.
Exactly. You stop managing individual preferences and start managing organizational protocols. The research confirms that employee satisfaction depends less on the specific tool Slack versus email than on the clarity of the channel.
So it's about the why and when.
That's right. The best practice is to create a communication choice architecture. It's a menu with clear response expectations. Deloitte is a great case study for this.
What did they do?
They didn't ban platforms like Slack. They just made it clear. Slack is for coordination, for quick things, with a 2-hour response expectation. Email is for formal documentation, final approvals, stuff that's not urgent, with a 24-hour window.
So you're not telling a Gen Z employee they can't use Slack. You're telling them why they need to use email for that final budget approval.
Precisely. And did that simple clarity move the needle?
It did, right.
It moved it 43%.
Mhm.
A 43% reduction in communication-related friction complaints. You don't eliminate channels, you set clear protocols for using them.
Okay, the third intervention is flexible work design and benefits optimization. We hear so much about millennials wanting flexibility, but the research says something a bit different.
It does. It says autonomy in choosing your arrangements matters more than the specific arrangement itself. Flexibility needs to actually correlate more with life stage-like caregiving or health issues than with generation.
Which means a blanket flexibility policy is probably going to fail.
It is. The solution is customizable, cafeteria-style flexibility. And this has to include things like phased retirement pathways, which lets older workers gradually reduce hours instead of just falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
It's so important for knowledge transfer.
And the Michelin North America example from the source material was great here. They used this career customization framework.
Right, which allowed employees to adjust their job's intensity, their schedule, their location, all across their lifespan. They tailored the job to the person.
And the result.
Within 3 years, overall turnover dropped by 19%. But here's the kicker for the sixth-generation problem. Turnover among workers over 55 was reduced by 34%.
34%. Wow, so that proves it works for everyone when you tailor it to the individual, not the birth year.
Exactly.
Okay, number 4, generationally inclusive team composition and facilitation. This goes back to our first point. Just throwing diverse people on a team isn't enough.
Not at all. You have to facilitate that diversity into cognitive game. You need to mandate purposeful heterogeneity. The Mercy Health System did this.
Wow.
They realized their age-homogeneous teams were missing things, so they mandated that every clinical quality improvement team had to include at least 3 different generational cohorts. And they backed it up with training for facilitators on how to run an inclusive dialogue.
That's a really practical structural change. And the impact.
Those reconfigured teams generated 52% more implemented improvements than the historical baseline.
52%. So age diversity is the raw material, and facilitation is the process that turns it into a better product.
Beautifully put. Which brings us to the last one. Age bias reduction and inclusive culture development. And this has to address both ends of the spectrum. The too young bias, entitled, inexperienced, and the too old bias, inflexible, incompetent.
You have to fight the stereotypes on both sides.
You do. And to do that, organizations have to embed what the sources call generational intelligence as a core leadership competency.
Okay, hold on. We've used that term a couple of times. How should we define generational intelligence for someone listening?
That's a great question. Generational intelligence isn't about memorizing birth years. It's the specific ability to recognize that different cohorts have different preferences for communication, for motivation, for collaboration, and then intentionally adapting your management style and creating structures that integrate those differences fairly.
So it's adaptive leadership, but applied specifically to age. How do you put that into practice?
PricewaterhouseCoopers, or PwC, is a great example. They introduced generational intelligence training, but crucially, they also revised their performance evaluation systems. They started anonymizing demographic info during those calibration sessions, which are so prone to subtle age bias.
And did that structural fix work?
It worked. Within 3 years, the percentage of employees reporting age-based discrimination dropped from 23% all the way down to 11%.
So these 5 interventions, mentoring, communication, flexibility, team design, and bias reduction, they're powerful. But for this to last, it has to be more than a program. It has to become a structural capability.
That's the long game. And it requires 3 strategic pillars, starting with strategic workforce planning. Leaders have to use this generational intelligence to model their workforce 5-10 years out. You have to anticipate retirement risk before it hits.
And do things like knowledge mapping to see who holds the critical expertise.
Yes. That's proactive risk mitigation, not reactive panic. The second pillar is anchoring everything in a purpose-driven culture. Purpose matters to everyone, but they might talk about it differently.
Right. Millennials and Gen Z might ask about it in an interview, but boomers and Gen X might express it through commitment and building a legacy.
Exactly. So organizations have to facilitate dialogues to find that shared mission that transcends those differences. And the third absolutely crucial pillar is continuous learning systems. We have to kill this toxic, outdated idea that training is just for early career employees.
That it's just to get them up to speed.
Right. Organizations that foster career-long learning thrive. IBM, for example, created personalized learning pathways for all ages. When their senior engineers took cutting-edge AI courses while teaching software architecture to junior developers, retention among technical staff over 50 improved by 27%. Framing learning as reciprocal, it changes everything.
So, what does this all mean for you as a leader or an employee trying to navigate all this complexity?
I think the core takeaway is clear. Generational diversity is not a problem to be solved. It's a strategic asset to be leveraged.
And that leveraging requires intentional, evidence-based systems. Systems that prioritize individual choice, reciprocity, and structural inclusion, not just passive accommodation.
The organizations that do this, that build these reciprocal learning cultures, they see measurable gains in innovation, turnover, and knowledge retention.
And those that don't, they face escalating friction, constant talent loss, and a pretty significant competitive disadvantage. So here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over. The source material suggests that with longer lifespans and accelerating change, the sixth-generation workforce is permanent. So we need to prepare not just for Generation Alpha, but potentially for a seventh and eighth generation coexisting in the coming decades.
Which means the competitive edge will belong to the organizations that view age not as a burden, but as the raw material for perpetual learning and innovation. So the ultimate question for you is, how will you ensure your systems reward wisdom and novelty equally?